Please welcome our speakers to the stage.
Hello.
Hi.
How are you?
I'm well.
So just quick introduction. I write about technology and AI at Reuters. I'm a journalist and a columnist. And Matthew, you run a Cloudflare technology company, which is quite interesting at the moment in terms of against like online in the debate between online content and artificial intelligence. So a lot of people blaming technology now is scrutinizing the business model of online content, and you actually are saying that there's a solution to it, right? And I think people here don't really know what role Cloudflare actually plays here. And what were you? Because you actually control 20% of the online traffic content. So what role you were before, and how has it transitioned since the ChatGPT pops up and starts scraping our content and not paying revenue to news organization? Do you mind to give us a little bit of like a breakdown of your role at the moment so that the audience can understand first your role? Yeah.
So Cloudflare fundamentally is a network. And we don't really have a dog directly in this fight. We're not an AI company. We're not a content creator. But we sit between those two things. 80% of the AI companies use us. Huge percentage of the content creators online use us. And so we've ended up in this role where we're a bit of a mediator between those two sides. And I have to confess that when I was first approached by media companies, and they said, we have this new threat. And usually when customers call us with a threat, it's, there's a new botnet, or there's a new nation-state actor that's targeting us. When they said that the new threat is AI, I rolled my eyes and I was like, media companies always complaining about the next technology system. But they said, just pull the data. Just go look at what is changing. And so we did. We have really reliable data over the last 10 years on what has happened online. And we looked at Google as a reference. 10 years ago, Google would scrape 2 pages for every 1 visitor they sent you. Today, what's changed, Google has added things like AI overviews at the top, which means that instead of being a search engine where they give you a treasure map where you have to click around and hunt on things, they've become an answer engine where they give you the answer immediately. And today, it's 18 to 1, 18 pages scraped for every 1 visitor. So it's gotten almost 10 times harder to be a media company today than it was before. And the currency of media has always been traffic. You generate traffic and then you can sell ads, you can sell subscriptions. And as the world transfers from being search engines to answer engines, that traffic is going away. And Google is the good news. If you look at OpenAI, it's 1,500 to 1. If you look at Anthropic, it's 40,000 to 1. And so all of that load is coming to media companies. And the value that they got for the last 27 years with Google of delivering back traffic is going away. And I think that's scary on one hand, but on the other hand, what it suggests is that there is a new business model that has to emerge. And when that emerges, we can think about what that is going to look like. Think about the things that worked really well for the internet for the last 30 years, but also the things that were deeply broken about the internet, and then help design a new business model for the next 30 years that hopefully gets the best of what we had, plus has some advantages. And I think that's the most interesting and transformative question that we as technology leaders, as civil society leaders, as regulators have to think about for the next little bit is, what is the future business model of the internet going to look like, and how is it going to get transformed by AI?
And then I'm just wondering, could you give me a breakdown? So why Cloudflare matters here? Because you say you're sitting in between the AI company and the news content, so both of them actually giving you money. So what are you trying to solve here? You say there's a problem.
Yeah, so I mean, our mission is to help build a better internet, and that means protecting our customers from different threats that are out there. And again, a lot of that's cyber threats, but it also means threats to their fundamental business model. And so it's been very difficult for the two sides to come together and say, what are the ways that we can work? And generally, Google, for the last 27 years, has the deal that they've had with media companies was, we get all your content for free, and then we send you back traffic that you can monetize. That deal has gotten worse over time. The other AI companies say, well, if Google's got that deal, we want that deal too. And if you look at markets, what has to happen for a market to exist, you really have to have two things. You've got to have demand, and the good news here is that the AI companies have insatiable demand for more and more content. But the other side is you have to have supply. That's not quite what you have to have. You actually have to have some level of scarcity. There's no market for air in this room. Like, no one's selling you air. If you go scuba diving, there's a market for air because there's no air underwater. The problem with content has been that it has generally been given away for free or very inexpensively, broadly. And what we need to do is change the equation, and the first step in that is creating some scarcity. And so what we've done at Cloudflare, starting on July 1st, is we said for free, for anyone, we'll provide you the tools, the technical tools, to say you don't get my content if you're an AI company unless you pay for it, unless you compensate me for it. And we don't know exactly how that market is going to develop, but we do know that the first way that a market has to develop is you've got to have scarcity, and that's what Cloudflare is helping do.
So you're basically trying to create some kind of blocker to
Not trying to create, we have created.
We created a blocker.
And we can absolutely stop all of the AI bots from doing that. And what that's done is that we've seen from media company after media company after media company, the deals that they've been able to do since then with the AI companies to be able to get compensated for the content they're creating have gotten significantly better. And I think that's just the start. There's a real opportunity for us to really invent a new business model for the future that will lead to, I hope, a much healthier internet and a much healthier media environment.
I was wondering, like, when you launched this kind of blocker, like,
Yeah.
who is the one paying for it? Is it a technology AI company? It's obviously the media company, right?
We give the blocker away for free.
Oh, you gave it for free?
Yeah,
Okay.
again, media companies don't need someone else telling them they have to pay. Like, media companies are struggling. My wife and I bought the local newspaper in our hometown because we believe there's nothing more important than local news. And so my incentive here is how do we make sure that the internet continues to thrive and exist? And if we don't figure out a new business model, it doesn't. So what's in it for Cloudflare? Our business is gone if there's no internet. Like that, our business depends on the internet, and it depends on a healthy ecosystem. And so the outcome I am trying to play for, just straight up, is I want as many AI companies as possible. We should have not tens, not hundreds, not thousands. We should have hundreds of thousands of different AI companies, all the different things for all the different needs, everyone that's out there. And it shouldn't just be one big brain to run it all. And then those AI companies should be interfacing with hundreds of thousands of content creators, millions of content creators, but also small businesses. What I don't think people appreciate enough about what's coming with AI is it's not just sort of another tool, it's a platform shift. Like, sci-fi teaches us a lot about the future. And if you think about any sci-fi movie where there's the helpful robot, and the protagonist comes down at the start of the day and says, hey, what were the most important news stories of the last little bit? And then the helpful robot reads them out, right? Or, I need to bake some cookies for my kid's school. What's a good recipe? The helpful robot doesn't say, here are 10 blue links, go search around and find them. The helpful robot says, here's a recipe for chocolate chip cookies, right? That's what's coming. And so the same way that we've had platform shifts where we've gone from browsers on our desktop or laptop computers to social media being the interface of how we consume information, to mobile, what's happening is this is a true platform shift. And the way that people are going to consume information going forward is through an AI interface. And what's both exciting but also a little terrifying about that is that all of the platform shifts in the past have followed the same business model, which was basically create content, generate traffic, and then figure a way to sell them something or show them ads. That was the business model for the original web. That was the business model for social. That was the business model for mobile. That will not be the business model for AI. It's going to be something different. And what that different thing is going to be there. And the reason why is, like, think about it take media away for a second. Think about a brand. What is a brand? A brand is a shortcut for humans to understand a level of quality. What does a brand mean in a world of agentic commerce? If I say to my helpful robot, hey, go buy me some milk, what do brands mean anymore? So this is going to radically transform not just the media is the canary in the coal mine, but small businesses. What happens to a small business in a world of agentic commerce? To brands, what does a brand mean in a world of agentic commerce? And I know there are a lot of people at the conference who have just said, oh, we've got to fight this, and this is bad, and technology is bad, blah, blah, blah. I think that's an unhelpful perspective, because this is coming because consumers want it to come. They want the helpful robot. And so what we need to do is actually think, okay, it's going to come. Now, how can we set the incentives in such a way that it actually brings and supports small businesses, that it supports quality, that is trustworthy fundamentally, and how do we make sure that's the case? And again, I think we need to start with media because that's the first industry that's going to be disrupted.
But then I guess like the question is like, is it like the ship has already sailed, that we basically are going to be like absorb, the consumer wants the AI overview, yes. But then we're also not encouraging them to like be curious to get into the information behind those AI overview, right?
So I think that's honestly, I think that's Ludditism. Like we're hiring. So Cloudflare is about 4,500 employees. We're hiring 1,111 interns in 2026. Where everyone else is not hiring, we think that's stupid. Because it turns out that when we bring interns in, they use AI as a tool to be even more curious, to do more, to be more productive. And what we want is more of that DNA with us. And so we're saying we're going to invest in that next generation because, yeah, the 50-year-old CEO, like I still use a lot of Google search, but I'm a dinosaur. Dinosaur. Right? And the future is going to be people who are, frankly, more curious, more able to get information. There were a lot of people who, when the internet took off, said, oh, it's going to make people less, read less. No, it's making people read tons more. And so I think that these, again, you can't fight the future. Consumers want this, but it is really important for us to make sure that as we design that business model of the future, that it is designed to do the things that the internet has been incredibly good at. Democratizing information, not siloing it. Making sure that it's available to everyone. Making everyone be able to compete on a global stage. Those are the best parts of the internet. We've also seen some really bad parts of the internet. The fundamental business model of the internet, which was traffic, generate traffic, get revenue, or generate traffic, get fame, leads to a bunch of bad things. Like, I think that BuzzFeed and the Huffington Post, I sat with Ariana Huffington, and she said, our business is to write stories as inexpensively as possible, and then to write the most salacious, anger, rage-baiting headlines on top of them to get people to click on them, and then show them ads against that. Like, that's the equivalent of saying, let's stage car accidents on the road so more people will look at billboards. Like, it's horrible, right? That has not made the world better. And I think that this idea that traffic is a proxy for value is just wrong. But what's amazing is the business model, no matter what, is about to change. Because traffic's going away. Everyone's going to just have their helpful robot tell them things. So the question is, how do we compensate creators?
And what says that?
Well, I think we don't know. But here's just a framework to start to think about it. For the first time in human history, we have something that's approximating a mathematical model of all of human knowledge. It's not perfect, but that's what the LLMs are. They've sucked all that in, they've built a mathematical model. And the way that I think about it is like a giant block of Swiss cheese. Lots of cheese, lots of holes in the cheese. And that same mathematical model that tells us what human knowledge is, tells us where the holes in human knowledge are. And what's interesting is the AI companies want to fill the holes. They don't want more cheese, right? Or they want more cheese, but in the places they don't already have cheese, right? Stretching the metaphor. But that's really interesting. And there's evidence that they're willing to pay for it. So I'll give you an example. Two great media organizations, the New York Times, credible media organization, and Reddit, also an incredible media organization, very different. Which one, their corpus, the amount of sort of information they have, if you look at the back history of the New York Times, you look at all of Reddit, is about the same. It's about the same volume of information across the two. The public number is that Reddit got 7 times as much for their information as the New York Times. The question is why? I think the answer is that if you don't have the New York Times as an AI company, you can just tell your bot to read the Wall Street Journal and rewrite it as if you're a New York liberal, and you get the New York Times. Now that's discounting to a lot of the amazing work that the journalists and others do at the New York Times, but I think there's something, a kernel of something that's there, which is that in the future, the thing that is the most valuable to AI companies is not yet another telling of the same story, but from a slightly different perspective. That's what the media of the past was, because what you wanted to do was actually show, I'm the liberal paper, I'm the conservative paper, I'm going to rile my audience up. That's not what the AI companies want to pay for. What they want to pay for is actually hyper-local, hyper-unique, hyper-original, quirky, interesting things that fill the holes in the cheese. So I think that the optimistic story here, and people, I'm going to lose some of you, but the optimistic story here is that 22 years ago, the entire music industry was worth about $8 billion, which is a lot of money, but that includes the Beatles and the Rolling Stones. I mean, it's not actually that much money. And then Steve Jobs steps on stage and announces 99 cents a song for iTunes. What had been happening before is Napster was there, music was getting commodified, everyone was taking it for free. It's exactly what's happening with the AI companies and content creators right now. And he said, listen, enough is enough. We're stopping it. We're going to put DRM in our systems, and we're going to make sure that you can actually get this. We're going to make it easy for you to pay for content. And 99 cents a song didn't win. It wasn't the business model that won at the time. What won was Spotify, right, and Apple Music and Tidal and all of those. And I flew up to Stockholm to see Daniel Ek, the founder of Spotify, because really no one has compensated creators at scale like Daniel. And what's incredible is last year alone, Spotify sent $10 billion to music creators. Now, we can quibble about did they send it to the right people or not, but they're just one of a bigger pie where Tidal and Apple Music and YouTube and TikTok, there is more money going into music creation today than ever in human history. And the industry has expanded massively, not shrunk as technology and the business model around it have changed. I think that's really interesting. The other story that Daniel told me, which I think is fascinating, is if you search on Spotify for Taylor Swift Shake It Off, they return a result. It used to be one result, now there's the original version and the Taylor's version, and so two results. But they know really well that you got what you wanted. On the other hand, if you search for, I want a song about how much fun it is to dance with my cat set to a disco beat, there's not really much out there. But what's interesting is they know that that wasn't very satisfied, so they take those queries and they publish them back to the music creators. They've essentially identified some of the holes in the cheese. And what's incredible is there's a guy in Denmark who makes 40 million euros a year just writing songs for unsatisfied Spotify queries. We're all in the wrong business.
Well,
But think how beautiful that is. When you search for something with music, what you're searching for is an emotion. And if you can't find it, then you don't have a way of tapping into that emotion. And they've actually built a way to feed that back to content creators and not try and say, how do we stir people up being angry, but how do we take the things that they're looking for and find ways to satisfy? And it's not just this one guy in Denmark. There are hundreds of music creators that are actually making a living doing exactly that.
Well, I understand the similarities to Spotify and the music industry, but that was also really depending on a good actor, like Daniel Ek, basically, willing to do so, right? And he did it at the expense of many years of loss-making in his company.
Yeah.
So until recently that he figured out a way to be profitable. So I was wondering, for AI company, the scales and magnitude that we see these days, like billions, trillions of valuation of monies that they raise, and they're still deeply unprofitable. When is the online content going to be at the top of their agenda? That they would like to come and tell us that,
yeah,
hey, I will pay you guys because I need you guys.
Yeah, so first of all, let's talk about kind of the structure of what it takes to be an AI company and that. Second, the conversations that we've had with them and what's encouraging. And then third, the one big roadblock that's holding this back, and maybe some optimistic news about how actually here in the UK, regulators might be at the forefront of breaking that roadblock. So let's start with first thing. So what do you need to be an AI company? You need three things. You need access to silicon GPUs, and OpenAI, just on their own, spends $10 billion a year on GPUs and silicon, and that's going up. The interesting thing about silicon is there's never been a silicon shortage that doesn't turn into a silicon glut. And it's been fascinating to watch where NVIDIA was so far in the lead, but AMD, Qualcomm, Broadcom, others are catching up very quickly. And I think we're going to go from a place where that $10 billion, they may still spend $10 billion, but what they get from it is going to be substantially more. And so over time, the silicon will become more and more of a commodity. The second thing you need are researchers. You need people who know how to build AI systems. And right now, I mean, we read the stories about how Meta is poaching researchers from OpenAI for like these just insane salaries, even more than the guy who writes the Spotify songs in Denmark. But that's why is that the case? Why is there a shortage of AI researchers? The reality is, if you were getting a PhD in AI 5 years ago, you were a weirdo. Just absolutely. Because it was a field that in the 70s and 80s was incredibly hot, and then everybody wrote off as a joke. And so it was pushed to the side. Now, it turns out that those weirdos are doing really well right now, but education and employment markets are efficient. And so everyone who had shut down their AI programs in the past, every university is spinning them up right now. And students who are in them are going and they're flocking to the courses that in the past no one would sign up for. So again, I don't think we're going to turn the researchers into commodities, but there's certainly going to be much more supply in the future, which is going to make it less expensive for you to build those two things. The third thing you need is content. And the content is the fuel that runs the engine. And that's the one thing that the companies aren't paying for. But again, if we give the technical tools to be able to block the crawlers, which is what we've done for free for any media company, anyone that's out there, that is the first step in actually building the market that's there. And I don't think you have to rely on charity. I don't think you have to rely on good news. And this goes to the second point, which is we've had conversations now, senior conversations with every single one of the AI companies, and they all know that they have to pay for content. And they're all willing to do it if there's a level playing field.
What does that mean? What is level playing field?
That if I am a company and I'm a certain size, that I have equal access to under the same terms as someone else, right? And that seems fair, right? That seems like that makes some sense. And OpenAI doesn't want to have to pay when everyone else isn't paying for it. And so I think you've got broad alignment around that, except for number 3, which is our problem child, which is Google. Google, to their credit, for the last 27 years has been the patron of the internet. They funded the internet. They built the system that generated traffic. They then built the system that allowed you to monetize traffic. They built all the ad system. And they have done more to support the internet ecosystem than any other company, and they should be heralded for that. But the world is changing. And Google's business model, which was generate traffic through giving you a treasure map that you would search around the internet and then allow that to be monetized, is getting threatened by the other AI companies because, again, they've built something that consumers want more. They want answer engines. They don't want search engines. And so Google is adapting to that, but in the process, less and less is going to the ecosystem. But Google is like, listen, we have a God-given right to have access to all of the internet because look what we did for it. And what they're doing right now is they're from the same crawler, the same thing that goes out and copies the internet for search, they're taking that same data, using that same crawler, and putting it into AI. And the problem with that is that there are special rules on the internet written specifically for Google's crawler that give it access to things that OpenAI doesn't have access to. That seems unfair. Moreover, you can't block Google's crawler without blocking search. And that's a little bit insidious, but even more so for media companies. Once you block Google's crawler, they'll actually shut down your ability to run ads on your site through Google's platform, which is the most dominant. So they've bundled the services together, which gives them a complete and total unfair advantage over every other AI company. And we have to remember, OpenAI was founded by Sam and Elon. And again, like y'all are going to boo over those people, but they founded it because they were terrified that Google was going to run away with the game in AI and that would be a bad outcome. And that's a good thing that those two people did, because we need more competition. So the key, the unlock, and the thing that seems unfair to OpenAI right now is, why does Google get it all for free and you're asking us to pay? And I agree that's unfair. So if you want to have a healthy ecosystem in AI, the most important thing to do is to say that Google has to play by the same rules as everyone else, that they have to split their crawlers apart, that search can do search, but that the AI system has to work and it has to start from scratch the same way that every other AI company does. And if we do that, I am confident, I will promise you on this stage, that we can get significant amounts of revenue going back to the media companies that are providing the fuel to actually run these AI engines, and every other AI company is willing to do it.
It just sounds like Google is the biggest problem here.
Well, but again,
I was just wondering then,
Yeah.
like your solution, like the early on, you say that, oh, you build this like blocker and so on.
Yeah.
It seems like it doesn't really help, like
I can
make
bl-
Google
I can-
to
I can-
change its
I can block-
behavior.
I can block everybody but Google. I can block Google too, but then you drop off of search. But think about how pernicious that is. If we block everybody but Google, we just handed the market to Google. And so this is a place for intelligent regulation. And why am I in London? I love the Thomson Reuters Foundation, and I'm always happy to come speak at events like this. But the real reason I'm in London is because I'm meeting with the Competition Authority. And the Competition Authority earlier this month designated Google as a strategic market, which is their kind of nice British way of saying a monopoly. I'm an American, I can be blunt. And when they were designated that way, now the question is what you do about it. And what I think they should do about it is be very clear. But they need courage. They need all of you to say this is important. Because what they need to do is say, we're going to say that Google has to play by the same rules as everyone else in this new market, that they can't leverage the monopoly that they had from the market of yesterday to the market of tomorrow. And if we do that, not only are we going to have a much more vibrant and robust ecosystem for AI companies, but we'll actually have a much more vibrant and robust ecosystem for media companies as well.
So it sounds like we're just at the beginning of the battle, and when we talk about like earlier about what is the new solution to protecting content, you say traffic is already dying, subscription advertising don't work anymore, and you
they will always. There's still record sales.
right?
There's still concert revenue.
But
so the old business model doesn't completely die, but we know for sure that traffic is declining, coming, and that ad revenue is declining, and the subscriptions are getting harder. And so, but the good news again, it's point back to Spotify, is that changes in business model don't have to be bad. And again, the traffic-based business model was bad in a lot of ways. It leads to rage bait. It leads to polarization. At some level, you think Google's mad at me already. Wait until this next sentence. Everything wrong in the world today is Google's fault.
Oh, God.
It's a little strong, but Google taught us that traffic was the god we worship to. That beget Facebook, which beget TikTok, which is spiraling us down this attention economy. And I actually think Google has been a massive net force of good in the world. But that business model is inherently going to be polarizing. So let's invent a new one. Let's invent one where people are actually compensated for filling in the holes in the cheese. What that means is compensate people for when they actually advance human knowledge. And for the first time in history, we have mathematical models to show when you create something, how much does it make humanity better? And I think that's incredibly encouraging.
And then that doesn't still, that's not a new business model yet. Like,
sure it
to
is.
quantify
It absolutely is. Reddit's making hundreds of millions of dollars selling their content. We just need to scale that to everyone. But the first step is blocking, creating scarcity. That's what Reddit's done. That's what everyone's done. That's what we're providing the tools to do. And then secondly, making sure that the one player that's not playing by the same rules as everyone else plays by the same rules as everyone else. With that in place, you've got demand, you've got constrained supply. That's how markets develop, and I think that this market can be a much healthier one, and it's why I'm actually super encouraged that we're on the cusp of a golden age of content online.
Cool. Well, on that note, I think we're the end of our discussion. We'd love to hear next time what's your bigger solution to the new business model.
Yeah, what I'm really worried about is what happens to small businesses, what happens to brands.
Yep.
I think we're actually going to be able to solve the media thing, but I'm really worried about small businesses.
Yeah.
So.
Cool. Well, thank you very much for your time.
Thank you.